everyone, welcome back to Cycles of Life podcast. So my name is Jana and I'm your host. And today I am joined by a wonderful Emily who is a herbalist. So Emily, would you like to introduce yourself, who you are and what you do?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, my name's Emily. I'm a herbalist, holistic health coach, seasonal living advocate, and I help women who are suffering with stress, chronic fatigue syndrome, and all of the myriad of symptoms and health problems that come with those two illnesses and health problems.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's something definitely that I'm very interested in. I've been kind of working with seasons for the last 2 years, really learning about how I react better when I actually follow the seasons. And that's one of the reasons why I just really want to talk to you about kind of how herbs can help us with that as well. So I thought would be great to begin with to actually learn how did you end up in herbalism, because it's quite a niche area. What led you to become a herbalist?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've only really become aware of myself in the last, I guess, 7, 8 years. And really, it was my own health problems that led me down the road towards a more sort of holistic way of looking at health, slower, more intentional way of living and being. And then sort of with that, the herbalism just sort of naturally followed. I was diagnosed with ME, CFS, or chronic fatigue syndrome, just after my 30th birthday. And while it felt like a relief to be able to put a name to all these health problems I've been dealing with, it was then really frustrating and heartbreaking to find out that actually it didn't really make a difference having a name to it, because I was more or less told, you've got this illness, there isn't anything we can give you to fix the problem, sort of. This is as good as it's going to get. And I was left to my own devices. And being the stubborn person that I am, I wasn't willing to accept that. And I decided to start researching on my own and looking for other ways to try and heal and feel better and sort of get back to the health I had before. And actually, now I can look back on it and be grateful for that journey, because it sort of put me back on I wouldn't say back on, it put me onto a path that was so much better for me. And I think a lot of that sort of illness, a lot of people suffering with those sort of illnesses, is from not having such a seasonal way of living and being completely out of sync in, like, the modern world is just not built for human health. And there's so many more people suffering with sort of similar problems as me now. And I really think herbalism and a seasonal way of living and a more holistic way of looking at health is really the way forward. I think I sort of went off track a bit there, but yeah, that's sort of how I came to knowing about herbalism.
That's brilliant. No, thank you so much. And it's interesting how, sadly, for a lot of us, that wake-up call always comes through something, is it? It's either illness or some big dramatic thing that happened in our life, and that is normally almost serves as the little wake-up call, and we try to find alternative ways to reconnect with ourselves, just recognizing that there's something is not right. There has to be another way of living and surviving.
Yeah. I think as human beings, we're not only creatures of habit, but we're also very set in our ways. So sometimes even the little niggles and the initial signs aren't enough, and it takes something a lot bigger, unfortunately, to make us reassess and change our ways.
Absolutely, yeah, agreed. Would you be able to describe what you mean by herbalism when you talk about it? Because obviously it's quite a broad term, and I think it could mean a lot of different things to different people.
Yeah, herbalism to me is the medicine of working with plants, and where there are many different ways to do that and many levels of herbalism, I guess. But anything where you are using natural, wild, preferably wild, plants or medicinal plants, and incorporating that into your day-to-day lifestyle for both supporting and healing mind, body, soul, spirit. But I think it's a lifestyle as well, and I think the seasonal aspect ties in with the herbalism, if that makes sense. It's all one way of being.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's something that I'm researching and learning quite a lot about right now as well. So you spoke about seasonal living and how important that is, kind of reconnecting with nature. I wonder, well, first of all, what does that mean to you? And more importantly, how does that look like in your life? And how can we reconnect with nature a bit more? Where can we start? What are the first steps to take?
Seasonal living for me is a connection with nature. It's living with and working with the natural rhythms of the earth, Mother Earth, rather than pushing against it. There's a natural sort of ebb and flow to the energy of each season, and every season is different. And by living more seasonally, you're also looking after your health and well-being. I think it's all interconnected. You sort of naturally do more, have more energy, have longer days during spring and summer. And autumn, winter is a slowing down, a hibernation and conserving energy and resting, rather than just constantly being on the go all the time. I think for me, seasonal living became sort of a natural way of being after having no energy at all for so long with my health, and sort of learning to balance how I was doing things and sort of listening to my body. It felt like that connection with nature sort of supported me and helped me understand that I didn't have to be working all the time. I didn't have to constantly be productive, and actually resting is productive. There's a cycle to that productivity and creativity, and part of that cycle is the resting so that you can replenish. And then actually, if you do rest, you have more energy and you're more creative and you're more productive as a result, rather than just running yourself into the ground. I think seasonal living is also seasonal eating, and the earth is very clever in that provide the vitamins, minerals and nutrients that we need within each season at that time. And it's better for our bodies to eat the foods that are naturally growing and ready to eat, rather than trying to eat all foods all the time. For example, sort of autumn, winter, there are more root vegetables, and we will eat more warming foods. And then in summer, it's sort of berries and lighter fruits and greens give us energy and help us feel lighter and more active. And I think it's all of it is seasonal living, and it's all sort of things that I incorporate in how I try and live seasonally as well. And just being out in nature and noticing the changes and reconnecting with the countryside around you or the nature around you. I think that is part of seasonal living as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And actually, so I live in London quite centrally as well. And for a long time, I always felt like I can only reconnect with nature when I'm in the countryside, when we go on holidays. Like I really like British nature, for example, spent a lot of time on our holidays exploring. But actually, in the last year, I realised how much you can observe by living in a city as well. So I have a big parks next to me, so I go on walks every few days. And just by doing that, I've noticed such a huge difference in how much more I notice and how, that seasonality really comes into play and changes slowly the way I approach everything.
Yes. I mean, it's obviously a little bit harder if you're in a city to really immerse yourself in nature, but there's always nature around, even if it's, the dandelions growing out between the footpath, or, the bumblebees or birds. There's always a little something there that you can notice and appreciate. And those sort of little moments are always something that make me smile, and they help you get you through the day when you've got small moments like that to appreciate.
Yeah, so true. And I also wonder, so obviously you work with people on one-on-one basis and help them reconnect with themselves. What are the most common issues maybe that people approach you, or what do you normally, not normally, but what do you tend to help people with? What are the main problems?
It's all sorts really. I think a lot of the time people just don't know where to start. They want to make changes, but it's often they don't have the time, or they don't think they have the time. And I see a lot of hormonal struggles, sort of menstrual cycle type problems and digestion that people are suffering with, which all sort of come down to the stress, the way they're eating. There's all sorts really. I think just the basic day-to-day living and wanting to feel better rather than run down and exhausted all the time is probably the big one.
Where would you start with someone who comes to you with issues, say they just want to have more energy in their daily life? Where do you start working with them? What is the kind of first few steps?
The first few steps are always backwards, really, as in finding out what got them to where they are now, looking at sort of their background, their health up until now, what sort of symptoms they're suffering with, and then from there start looking at their day-to-day routines, what they're eating, how well they're sleeping, their current sort of menstrual cycle and what that looks like, all the way through to digestion and the bowel movement and sleep, and really just doing a bit of an MOT and an assessment of as much as possible, because it's usually not just one thing that is the problem or the issue. A part of herbalism, looking at the whole picture of the body as a whole rather than just say one system or part. So to be able to do that and get a full picture of the person, it's doing a bit of digging and background research first.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Are there any general recommendations that you could give listeners? Any specific herbs that are kind of good for everyone? I know it might be quite a hard question, but is there anything kind of basically I'll look at is there small changes that anyone can make just to make a little shifts in their life?
Oh, gosh, it's hard because everybody is so different and bodies react to things so differently. It's hard to just recommend a herb that will work for everybody. I would say if somebody is struggling with stress or feeling run down and generally under the weather, something that is worth everybody looking into is Adaptogen Herb. That's sort of an umbrella term for a number of different mushrooms, roots, berries, but they are generally, they're called adaptogen herbs because they help the body adapt. So they help bring the body back into balance, help the body to deal with stress, and depending on what issues each person is dealing with, there's usually an adaptogen herb that can help. There are some that help with sleep. There are some that help with hormone balance. And I'd say if somebody is interested in sort of a herb that will help around the area of stress and energy, researching adaptogens and having a read. And I would say go with what calls to you and what speaks to you. And try with that. There's not really an adaptogen that you can go wrong with. So
that's good to hear.
So yeah, I would say adaptogens are a good place to start.
That's cool because it feels like it's a bit of a buzzword. But actually, I like that you broke it down. I didn't realise there was adaptogens because they help body to adapt, which sounds so obvious. But I don't know. For me, it sounded something very complex, like magical stuff. It was very hard to get.
Yes, there's always something that I guess adaptogens it was antioxidants last year. It's adaptogens at the moment. I think they become buzzwords for a reason. So although it becomes a trend, it started because there's usually some truth behind it, and they work. They do something good for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you have a favourite herb?
Oh gosh. I have a couple that I've been drawn to for the last few years that I work a lot with. Nettle is one, and Mugwort. They're my two favourites for very different reasons. Nettle, I just think it does so much and it's so easily available for everybody and is underrated. Most people, I think some of the most medicinal herbs are what most people consider weed, and the ones that can probably give us so much, so like dandelion, nettle, plantain, sort of the plants that you would see along hedgerows and the sides of roads and things, and they're actually full of nutrients and really good for us. So yes, nettle is one, and mugwort is a herb connected with the moon. It's a very feminine herb. It helps with sort of sleeping and lucid dreaming and connecting with sort of ancestry and going back to your roots. There's a very feminine herb, and those are the two that I've been drawn to and keep coming back to for a few years now, and use and take regularly as well.
What are the best ways of ingesting these herbs? So, for example, I have a nettle tea, which I love, so I drink that quite often. But what are the best ways? Do they have to be fresh? Teas, tinctures? What is the best way?
I don't think there's a best way. There's lots of different ways. Starting out and wanting to sort of start incorporating more herbs is an infusion or a tea. That is the simplest and easiest way, but sometimes that is the most potent and effective way as well. It tends to depend on the herb itself, what you're trying to achieve, and what else you're combining it with. Some herbs or like things like roots or dried berries are often better in a sort of a tincture format because it helps to extract more of the properties from the roots and things as they're sort of harder, literally, whereas leaves and things like that, it's easier to take as a tea. But you can also make tablets out of things and lozenges. You can add them to honeys. There's all sorts of things. But yes, I'd say it really depends on the herb itself as to which is the best way of using it.
Mm-hmm. If someone would like to start kind of using different herbs and stuff, obviously, ideally, I would imagine you would have your own herb garden where you can just grow all of these wonderful things. Where else people can purchase if they don't have access to the herbs outside them? I'm just thinking, as someone who lives in London, I can't just go out and forage, and also probably wouldn't want to forage in central London anyway. Like, where could I purchase these things? Where is a good place to start?
There are a few different websites, or it would be going to like a health food shop, somewhere like that. Holland and Barrett are quite good at, I'm trying to think of, off the top of my head, trying to think of some shops, places that would, Holland and Barrett are usually quite good with sort of teas and that sort of thing. And sort of smaller health food shops definitely tend to stock the teas and sort of loose leaf teas. Mm-hmm. It might be easier if I could probably give you a couple of website details if you want to I sort of include those with, I don't know if you do, is it show notes?
Yeah, I will do, yeah. That'd be amazing.
You do at the end. Yeah, I could give a couple of websites that are UK based that are, so what I found is a lot of the websites are American, and obviously that's not ideal. Mm-hmm. So I have ended up, I mean, I'm quite lucky. I can forage and harvest a lot of things myself and grow some. But yeah, that would be my recommendations for starting out, is looking for local little health food shops.
That's brilliant. Do you sell any of the herbs or tinctures or anything for your clients, for example?
I have actually just this year, the end of April, I released my first set of products, and I'm planning a summer release for some more things coming soon, and hopefully keep growing that as I go seasonally. But yes, I did a series of 5 herbal glycerides that I launched earlier this year. So I am starting to actually sell product. I just felt that was the next step. So rather than just being able to recommend things for clients and that to take, I would actually be able to provide something for them to take. So yes, I do.
No, amazing. I will link to that as well. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And if anyone would like to work with you, how should they approach you? Where are the best ways to follow you?
I'm Emily in the Plant on Instagram and Pinterest. And my website is emilyintheplants.com, and people can either message me directly on my website or send me a message on Instagram if they want to get in touch. All my information and everything is on the website, and some of the sort of free resources I've got as well. And I've got a blog if people want to sort of read more about herbalism and holistic health and stuff. There's lots of info on there already. But yeah, just emilyintheplants.com is probably the easiest place for people to get hold of me and say hi.
Amazing. Are you working on one-on-one basis right now? So if anyone wants
I'm doing some one-on-one consultations. I've got the product range, and I've got some sort of digital products in the works as well at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Amazing. Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to share with listeners?
Oh, I could say I have a free resource on my website at the moment. It is herbal teas for the seasons. So if people did want to start maybe experimenting with blending some herbal teas, that's a free download that they can get on my website and maybe try that to start with.
No, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I think that's very helpful, and it feels like it's a great place to start for a lot of us who are quite oblivious to all the wonders that nature can offer to us.
I know it can feel a little overwhelming once you start looking into it, because there are so many different medicinal herbs. So it's probably easy to start with the teas and something that's quite sort of straightforward to experiment with and have a play with and just taste and see what all the different herbs taste like and how they feel to you.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much for your time. That was a very insightful conversation. I definitely learned a lot of new things.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it. So yeah, it was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Emily. I think she's just so wonderful and so calming too. And I also wanted to let you know that I'm running a free workshop. So if you're listening this in May or at the beginning of June, the workshop will be on the 14th of June. It's completely free. The link will be below, so you can just register for that anytime. It's just Eventbrite link. But the workshop is for anyone who just really wants to find more time to create things that they really care about, because we're all so busy and we just never have time to spend on things that actually matter to us. Something, maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's a side passion project, whatever that is. So this workshop will break it down for you. How to create time for things that truly matter. We'll learn how to check in, set priorities for the upcoming months. We'll understand some of the blocks. We'll talk about energy leaks. We'll talk about different habits and actually how important it is not to be afraid of the success. The workshop is on the 14th of June, but if you missed it, don't fret. Please just sign up to my newsletter and I might be able to send it out to you because the plan is to record it as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure that you subscribe or follow so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you are so inclined, would greatly appreciate if you share it with a friend or leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll speak very soon. Bye everyone.